Hello and welcome to Higher Results, where business, workforce, and talent intersect. Hello, I'm Melody Reagan, CEO of Eye2Eye Workforce and your host. On Higher Results, we cover all things HR throughout the life cycle of a worker, as well as you and your career. Today, we're doing part 2 of Coaching It's Hot, and we're going to explore how to go about finding and selecting a coach. Now, I have my same panel with me today, and I'm just going to hop into this one. Let's do this in reverse order. Steve, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. I'm Steve Perry. My company is Sales Productivity Consultants, and we're sales development strategists.
Fantastic. Jennifer?
Jennifer Cronenberg. My company is JMK Coaching and Consulting. I work with executives, entrepreneurs, and just about anyone looking to be more successful and have impact in the world.
Fantastic. Suzanne?
I'm Suzanne Levy. My company is Boulder Leadership. I'm an executive coach, and I work with the most senior leaders in an organization, C-suite, all the way down to VP, Fortune 500, mid-market, and mature startups.
Awesome. All right, so today we've talked about a range in part 1, our range of coaching relationships, and how they can add value. Well, now I'm committed. So let's start with, how do I go about looking for a coach? So Jennifer, where would I go looking, and what would I be looking for?
Well, I think first it would depend upon what kind of coach you're looking for, what your outcome, your desired outcome is. And so I would narrow it down based on that, because as we've discussed, you have executive coaches, you have business coaches, you have sales coaches, life coaches, personal success coaches. Once you've narrowed that down, I would say that you can do word of mouth, ask around. You can, of course, go online like everybody does and see perhaps testimonials. You could go look at the ICF, that's the International Coaching Federation website, and there would be a list there of certified coaches that you could go to. There are also businesses that you can look at, coaching, like Suzanne has her own company, and Steve, where they would have like a team perhaps of coaches. You could go that route as well. There are many different paths to choose.
By the way, I think that was a fantastic summarization. So thank you for that. What I love, you just made it easy for the other. You covered it. The thing, though, that I think was really important that you started with is, what's the outcome that you're seeking? What is it that you are looking to elevate? So, for example, if I'm a sales executive and I'm really wanting to better understand my sales methodologies, take my organization to the next level, then, that's one of those things. I should be looking for somebody like you, Steve. On the other side of that is, I could be in a situation that I know maybe I'm hitting a ceiling and I'm not getting as far in my career. So that's where I would look for one of the two of you, depending on what my background and experience is. So start with your outcome. You have a lot of choices. And I always tell people, I love it when you start by asking. Because when I have colleagues that tell me, I've had a fantastic coach, I really love referrals, but all the way through to IFC. So, okay, so here's where I'm going looking, and I've got an outcome. I want you guys to tell me, what should I be looking for? What do I look
And
for?
you're looking at me. So,
what do I look for, Steve?
I might be a little bit different because, again, I typically work with organizations. It's pretty rare that an individual salesperson would come to me. But when we look at the outcome, usually is either increased revenue or more predictability, or I want to keep my staff longer. You want to look at someone who has the experience and background to do that. But what I found, I was associated with an international consulting training group for 14 years. And we taught the same kinds of things, but we were a world apart in terms of personality and how we were wired. And, I'm a former second grade school teacher, so I come across a certain way. Other people were hardcore salespeople. They came across a certain way. You got to be able to connect with someone. Do they have the emotional intelligence to really understand you? And I think what's come up in our last session, which is, I can't tell you how important it is that human beings typically don't listen very well. And the person you're meeting with as you're interviewing, are they actually listening to you? And are they asking spot-on questions based on something you just said? So if they've got a clipboard in front of them with a bunch of questions, not that that is bad, but I would be a little more skeptical.
I love that. And by the way, I have a clipboard.
So I would add to that a little bit too, if I may.
Yes, please.
What Steve's saying is so true. what I usually do is I will offer just a complimentary session. I think most coaches do that. And this not only gives the potential client an opportunity to feel, is this a fit? Am I comfortable? Am I excited about working with this person? Do I feel like I can trust this person? Do they feel like they are experienced in what I need according to what I'm looking for? And then it also, for me, gives me an opportunity to see, is it a fit from my end? Because it does happen sometimes where I will be working with someone and I can just tell, I can't get this person where they want to be, and I have no interest. And I will refer them to maybe a salesperson, for example, or a therapist, or if it's not there, if that connection is not there, because this is really intimate work together. You're asking really deep questions if you're doing your work well, and you need that client to be able to be completely authentic and feel that this relationship is one that's going to spiral them up.
So what I'm hearing that one is I have outcome, right? I also, by type of coach, just depending on what you're looking for, I need to make sure that I'm looking for somebody who has that expertise, right? That, like, you work with senior executives. So what I'm not going to do, you work with senior executives. As if I was a manager, I'm not going to waste your time and reach out and say, hey, Suzanne, help me. So it's getting the experience together. Then it's actually meeting and making sure that I have appropriate resonance with the person that I'm meeting with. And if possible, I love this, do a trial session if it feels right. A couple things though up front. So you're making this as a choice, right? How should I go about setting up the relationship with the coach, Suzanne? Is it contractual? Is it under confidentiality? Do I have terms to it? What should I be doing?
Well, like Steve, mine might be a little bit distinct because often it's coming through a company, but even if it's an executive and they're doing it on their own, certainly if it's with corporate, I have some sort of terms. But with a person, I like to have something that there's some agreement that can be a little bit more personal, like what this is and what this isn't. It's not consulting, it's not therapy, and you're going to be choosing, and you're really the one that's going to be generating results. So to that degree, I think that's just an accountability agreement. I think one of the more important parts is the confidentiality, and that a coach should be stating that to you about the confidentiality. In my case, there's an interesting nuance because if an executive is being coached, their manager may be part of the process, and HR, et cetera. So it's an interesting navigation, but I'm honoring everyone in my case, most importantly the client. And I would never tell anything. So they have to really feel that in any case, I would imagine. Sometimes in a small business, it might be overlapping. So I think as someone looking for that, you have to really feel that confidentiality is really there for you so you can get as intimate and it can be as transformational as possible.
By the way, I love what you brought up in terms of there's a difference in the relationship. One is if it's a one-to-one, so let's just say I went to Jennifer and I went coaching for me. On the other side of that is, let's say, Suzanne, I decided that my COO for Crazy Good Marketing needed coaching. I might come to you and say, hey, I'd like for you to coach her. But what needs to be understood is in that relationship, I'm actually part of it. Mm-hmm. So where you have the manager and the individual, and you work with organizations along those lines as well. So
if I could add one thing to that,
please.
Because I do work with corporations, and I do work one-on-one, and I do work with just personal,
absolutely.
Right? There is a distinction between if you're working with a corporation, at least the way I work, I do make sure they sign a contract and that it's clear that I am coaching that executive, but that, say, the CEO, if it's somebody under the executive, may be brought in on the progress, what's going on, the outcomes listed, but that my conversations with that executive are confidential, with one exception. If there's something going on that is illegal, mm-hmm. I could get subpoenaed. Mm-hmm. And I make sure that my clients know that, is that yes, we have a confidential relationship, But if you're doing something illegal, please don't tell me.
Otherwise, you will act on it. So
I'm not
it
going to
is.
just
It's one
offer
of
it,
those
but if I'm
things.
subpoenaed by
Yeah.
law, I have
Yeah.
to. And I don't know that everybody understands that.
Well,
Because it's vital
is.
to have that confidentiality and to know that your coach will keep everything confidential.
And so, along those lines, though, how do I trust that you will be confidential? How do I figure that out? I mean, that's kind of a big thing. Do I put it in a contract? How do I truly trust?
I think that goes down to you've chosen a coach because of really a gut feeling I feel about them. And do you trust them? I mean, we're not going to get anywhere with a client if they don't trust us at a pretty intimate level. And if all of a sudden they think we're going to go ratting them out to their supervisor, it's not going to work out. So I personally
That's
don't
very
have any
true.
contracts because I'm working with smaller companies. And
That's trust on your part, back to the company.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, you have to show trust. I mean, that's part of leadership is following and showing trust, and,
Yeah.
and you get it back that way.
Oh, fantastic. How about
I
that?
would add one more thing that's interesting, and I agree with you. And I would state to people, that part, and also if you're going to hurt yourself, that's unfortunately. I think also that I have not found people really to have an issue. I think most people are very eager if they start to trust you to just want to start talking. Like I've got someone I can talk to, and there could be a later point where they could question your confidentiality if evidence were to show up. In the corporate environment, I encourage more transparency. So I'm always encouraging that anything we're talking about, try and, support you to say that to your manager. And we have triad conversations, like let's create some openness. If a manager or HR person is saying they need to work on this, great, have you shared that? So we're not the messengers either, in these cases when there are other people involved. So the more we can put out there, I think that also builds the confidentiality because they hear you saying, let's bring this to your manager, or let's have them bring it to you. And sometimes you hear about a conversation that's happened where you weren't part of it and you're like, oh yeah, they got together. Yay.
I know, isn't that fantastic? So how often should I meet with my coach? And here's the other thing, in meeting with them, what should I set up as expectations? Like I'm used to working to plans. I always set targets, goals, where I'm coming. So how do I keep my coaching relationship from being nebulous? So how often and how do I keep it from being nebulous? What do you think, Suzanne?
Well, I've tried a variation of different cadences. I like 3 times a month, and most of mine is virtual. So if someone is local or it's a 6-month engagement or a year, we might meet 2 or 3 times, just so I also have that face-to-face. And then in the beginning, we might have a little more upfront, because in my case or yours, we might do some assessment work or 360 feedback where you might spend a little more time. I like the 3 times a month. It gives enough time and it gives a little bit of breathing room. And I work with people only a minimum of 6 months. And then sometimes it goes on for years because people may be moving into new roles or moving to different companies.
So we're going to come back to your minimum. How about you? What do you think? How do we go about and make sure frequency and that we're getting results?
I'm similar to Suzanne in that I prefer 3 times a month to start, probably the first 3 months. And then if it feels like our momentum has moved us forward and we can go twice a month, then I let the client let me know if that feels appropriate to them. I also do like accelerator days. The way I work with a client is I customize it according to what they need. So we may have quarterly days together or even 2 days together where we get very intense on our work together of how to move forward. And then, the length of it, 6 months is a minimum, and they're usually 6 months or a year, and then they sometimes, will continue. I work face-to-face, I work over the phone, I work over Skype or Zoom video. I have clients, in Europe and around the, not just in Colorado. So it's very flexible.
Fantastic. All right, how about you, Steve?
Well, again, I work with teams, and I know you love data. So the company that I work with that evaluates sales teams just recently evaluated the most recent 9,000 sales managers and looked at, for one thing, how many of them are good at coaching. And it was about 10%.
Yeah.
And those were the elite sales managers. only about 25% of these elite sales managers coach their people weekly or more often. And so a lot of coaching doesn't happen at all. And if it happens, the performance is so poor. And so what I typically do is I'm working with the sales manager, I'm working with the leadership, and we typically do an assessment of the organization and find out where's the gap. We want to do a gap assessment. What do we need coaching on? What needs to be training? What do they not know? And what do they know that they're not doing? And we can identify those things. And so ideally, if you've got a newer employee that's just getting started that has some gaps, they should be coached every single day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes weekly, sometimes bi-weekly. If you've got top of the line sales guys, once a month, go have lunch with them. But what we do ultimately, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, I think so, but it's what I did when I was teaching second grade, is behavior modification. Mm-hmm. We're changing people's behavior. That takes time. It takes repetition. And what I found in my old world, doing training and coaching, I would have clients for a year and a half. I'd see them every week for 2 hours. And I'd have them for a year and a half. And they would come back to me 2 or 3 years later and say, I've fallen off the wagon. Oh, wow. I need some more help. And they'd come back, and because people get lazy.
It's building a habit. You know what? I love what you all said in terms of you are about behavior modification. But the other thing that I think is interesting is if you have a coach, it helps you be a better leader coach. Because it is about us coaching our own workers and helping them be the best that they can be. All right. Well, you guys, I'm going to go to the next thing. What should I, when I'm considering my coach and my coaching relationship, should a coach be certified? Do I need to have someone certified, or what are some of the credentials I should be looking for? What do you think?
Well, I'm certified, but I feel as if I was coaching for my very first company because I loved building businesses and I loved growing the people. And I'd like to think I was effective in that. But I wanted to be certified because I also was a little bit more on the side of a consultant where I would give people the solution. I would fix, which is not what really good coaching is all about. ICF, International Coaching Federation, is quite good. Gives you the tools, gives you you do have a code of ethics around, confidentiality, and I have you have the tools, but I have some also amazing coaches that are not certified. So,
Suzanne?
I have a lot of thoughts about this. I'm not certified. I started almost 20 years ago when I didn't even know what a coach was, couldn't even explain it to them. I think that nowadays, there are a lot more people who say they're coaches. Back when I was doing it, again, I had to be like, all right, let me explain to you what I'm doing. And so, and I actually personally had done other personal development work when I was younger, so I was honing skills. But I think now there's so many people that just say, oh, I love coaching. I want to be a coach. I could be a coach.
They do.
That even if you're certified, you may not be great. Because you can get certified in so many different types of coaching now. There's a lot of schools out there. So I think it still depends on what you're looking for. Some people will only do certified, and some coaching companies will only use certified, but they're still vetting very strongly. So I think that it's great if someone went and took a course in some courses and classes to understand the purity of coaching like you're describing, and that would lend itself to become a better coach. But I don't know that I think it's required.
By the way, I would agree with that, and that also applies to HR.
Yeah.
You have HR professionals that are certified and others who aren't, and it's about experience. And I think the important word here is vetting. Vet the coach. Make sure, ask them the background, understand the kind of coaching arrangements that they've had, the experience, and look for references.
Well,
one of the other ones for me is get a reference and call a reference. Yeah.
Well, I think the perspective, and we've kind of talked around it here a little bit. When I think of certification, I was certified as an elementary school teacher. Back years ago, because it's very similar. But I think that I look back at my 40 years, what certainly all of us have, and I think what you should be looking for is perspective. Do you have the ability to process what you're hearing, run it through a filter of your experience and your perspective and where you've been and what you've done, and be able to ask the spot-on question that really gets to the heart of the issue.
Fantastic. Well, now let's talk about this as far as coaching. What are trends that are going on? You know, one of the things where we have all the different, but how is coaching changing?
I think a few things I would say that I see is, one is it's seen over the years more as an investment, not you're a problem or you have a problem. It's very much behavior oriented, I would say, more now.
That's right.
I think also there's support needed in cross-generation. I have a lot of leaders who say, I don't know how to work with millennials. I don't know where, I'm looking at these guys. They're coming from a different place, which is totally appropriate, but it's a very different conversation, and I need to understand that better. And then I see in startups, you know, they're just ready and willing to take any resource that they can to support them because they just want to grow and build and do what they came to do. Those are the kinds of things I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing that the world is changing so quickly with technology that things are going faster and faster and faster, and you have to stay on top of it all, and it gets very overwhelming. And coaching can help to just, like you said, get the assessment. Where do you want to go? How can we make sure that you are moving forward in a manner that is effective and is also healthy for you? And I would say that another trend that I'm seeing is a holistic approach, whether it's, you know, executive coaching, corporate coaching, or personal success coaching. I think more and more today, people want to live well-rounded lives. You want to enjoy the journey.
Awesome. What do you think, Steve?
Well, again, from the world that I live in, when I first started doing this almost 20 years ago, the recommendation was managers should be spending 25% of their time coaching their salespeople. Now we're looking at 50%, and no one is touching it because everyone is so busy doing everything else. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we need the biggest change, I think, is that people have recognized the importance of coaching. And in our world, the thing that salespeople hate the most is role playing. And to be an effective coach, you have to be effective at
role play,
at facilitating a role play, because you learn a lot through that.
That's very true. We learn by doing. And you were going to say
something. One more thing I think is mindfulness. I think mindfulness, meditation has become a common language because things are moving so fast. Mm-hmm. If companies are also becoming leaner or virtual, the stress levels are just rising. Yeah. So a lot of clients meditating, just taking walks that they need.
Fantastic. By the way, a couple of things that I see in addition to, I'm going to go to your, where we are automating, more and more automation, virtual coaching, just the same way the workforce is going. But fascinating enough, because we have more and more coaches, more and more regulations are coming around this, because somebody can hang out a shingle. So you guys, I could go on and on. Thank you so much for being here. And I just want to remind you, you're going to look for a coach, and I'm going to share just a couple of things. You know, start with what your objective is. What are you looking for to get from a coach? I think Jennifer gave us great ways of finding them, from referrals, looking online, also with the IFC. Make sure, though, what I'm going to say is meet with them, try them out, make sure you're doing good vetting, check references, and then establish your relationship. And relative to your relationship, it's two-way. It's not about them managing you. It's also about you managing that relationship. Now, a question I get frequently is, how much should I pay for a coach? I will tell you that on average, you see rates that run $75 to about $300 an hour. That said, it's really about the specialty and what it will cost you. It varies by the expertise, the time of the individual, so on and so forth. And just always remember, you get what you pay for. So thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate it. You know, here, please put us on your calendar. It's every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Mountain Time, and that is on Facebook.com/Hire Results. Miss a show, don't worry about it. You can find us online at eye2eyeworkforce.com/hire-result. And we have a whole library of fantastic shows for you there. Until we see you again next, we'll see you on the internet. Have a great day.